A Giants podcast for Giants fans
by Giants fans.
It's Shaun Morash.
On the sideline, into the end zone. Touchdown, Giants!
From the offseason to the wins and the losses, it's time to take one Giant step.
Welcome inside One Giant Step, a Week 18 recap edition. We did it. We got through the regular season, a long, grueling regular season. Some might say the worst regular season that any Giants fan has experienced literally in quite some time. I'm Shaun Morash. He's Bryce Gelman. If you're a first-time listener, welcome aboard. Let's get ready for the offseason. If you're a long-time listener, thanks for sticking with us all season long. If you're still a new-ish listener, hey, thanks for joining. I'm Shaun Morash. He's Bryce Gelman, at Bryce Gelman, at Shaun Morash on Twitter, X, the whole 9 yards. So here we go, Bryce. The season is over. The Giants have, in fact, lost. Everybody can calm down. They're going to win. Bryce Gelman was so concerned. They're going to win. Evan Roberts on my Evan and Tiki show. They're going to win. I'm telling you, they're going to win. I told you guys they would not win because it was the Giants' backups playing versus the Eagles' backups. And they don't. And we end up not picking 2, like I thought, but 3. So not as bad as 4, not falling back at 9. The Giants are picking 3rd overall in the NFL draft. So, Bryce, let's just start right there. Before we get into what the 3rd pick means, before we get into the future of this regime, let's just breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief. The Giants are not picking 7th, 8th, 9th, something like that, and they did not beat the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's a miracle of all miracles. This is on epic proportions, the fact that the Giants actually lost this game, a game in which I expected them to win. Of course, as you mentioned, Evan Roberts predicted them to win as well. Smart minds think alike, of course. That didn't come to fruition. But in that game, Shaun, I mean, there were multiple chances the Giants had to come back at the end. They had, 50 seconds left at the end. They could have went down the length of the field, scored a touchdown. I texted you, and I said, didn't I predict them to win 20-17? I believe it was that. And it was setting up for that. You were a little ahead of me. You just reminded me and told me the game was over. Thankfully, it was. But listen, all things considered, they did the job. They did their job. They lost the game. They should have lost.
And what you just learned there is a lesson for all you cord cutters and streamers. Bryce Gelman had no idea what I knew, which was Kayvon Thibodeau and Boogie Basham had no interest in the Giants winning a football game, and apparently neither did Brian Daboll. I'm glad you brought that up about chances in this game, and this will kind of tie into the future of the regime and whatnot. But this was the first time I watched a game and openly saw things from the Giants that resembled not players not trying, but a coach purposely putting a team in a situation he otherwise wouldn't. Granted, it's the last week of the year, so maybe kind of anything goes. But, Bryce, I'm just going to hit you with a couple things I noticed throughout the game and tell me if I'm crazy, cuckoo, whatever.
The 4th and 7. The 4th and 7.
There's a couple now. Think about this. Going for 4th and 7 when the Giants did early in the game. 4th and 7? What? Okay. Now, you want to make the case that's a one, look, it's the last game. Hey, anything goes, try it out. Okay. I mean, I guess I can live with that excuse. Then the following drive in that early first quarter, the 3rd and 9 call where they just basically call a draw run. And then don't go for a 4th down. It was like, wait, that's your play call? But really, where I was tipped off that things were not necessarily the same. It's the last game of the year. Malik Neighbors is out there. He has to pad beyond the records he was doing. He did become the Giants' single-season reception leader, passing Steve Smith. But, he got like 1 ahead of Brock Bowers, and Bowers would have passed him later in the day. But, dude, when they went down 7 and it was like 10-3, Malik Neighbors comes out of this game and is literally on the sideline holding his helmet. The helmet's not even on, like he's out of the game. The Giants then go down 14 points. And Malik Neighbors almost comically is allowed back in the game and goes for like a 46-yard touchdown, which would be his last touchdown of the year. And I thought to myself, is anybody not noticing this? He was removed from the game holding his helmet, and it wasn't until they were down 2 touchdowns that he was re-put in almost to say, all right, you want to go back out there, have your fun, score a touchdown, and not ruin this thing? All right.
You think he had a debilitating injury being taken out of the game and then being put back in when it actually mattered.
It was amazing. It was amazing. And then my favorite of the day was the fake punt call. And I had several people on my Twitter timeline at Shaun Morash go, wow, what about that fake punt? Dave's going all out. And here would be my answer at a fake punt. That fake punt should have been stopped. God bless Dane Belton. He figured it out. The Eagles were caught stumbling there. But I think Dave's intention there was, hey, we're going to have some fun. Gabriel's earned the right to call something fun here. He's had a good, couple moments, special teams to turn the kick. But ultimately, it's a fake punt. The percentage of those hitting are not high. We're probably going to get stopped. They didn't get stopped. Okay. But I think Dave's deep down probably thought, whatever. We get stopped. It's a fake punt. Who cares?
How are you not sitting on a fake punt there if you're the Eagles?
It's amazing.
How are you not waiting for a fake punt at that point of the game, at that point of the season?
It's amazing. And then maybe my favorite all-time Giant moment from this year. After Bookie Basham jumps offside, after Kayvon Thibodeau takes the head to the helmet penalty, which, by the way, I could see Kayvon was upset about that. I don't think he intended to do that. The Giants get the ball back with a chance to go down, and I would think if they ended up scoring, they would probably go for 2 or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And with 57 seconds left, your last drive of the year, down a touchdown, the Giants keep Malik Neighbors on the bench and keep Tyrone Tracy on the bench. And if you want to say, well, Tyrone Tracy, 2-minute drill, whatever, it's 57 seconds left. He's your rookie running back who's going to be your starting running back next year. I think he could play the 2-minute drill. And you didn't play Singletary, you played Eric Gray. They put Eric Gray and Jalen Hyatt out there, and the Giants went down with a whimper. So
listen. In Daboll's defense, he was probably thinking about the Panthers game in overtime.
Yeah,
Tyrone Tracy fumbled the ball. Why would you play him again?
But no Malik Neighbors there. So look, this has been an argument, Bryce, on this podcast. This has been a debate in NFL circles, and I think there is some variance and truth to it. Players don't tank because you're not going to put your body on the line and do all that, and you're not going to ask players to tank. Organizations can decide to tank without letting the players know by making decisions on what guys to play, what guys not to play. All right? You're not going to tank if you think there's a chance you're fighting for your job either. I don't think you would do that. Last week, the Giants went out and beat the Indianapolis Colts and stopped themselves from going winless at home. And I believe that Brian Daboll, going into that game, was still extremely unsure about his future. I believe, Bryce, I don't know if you believe this too. Just look, when Jay Glazer speaks, that's usually time to listen with the Giants. Yep. Jay Glazer this morning on Fox, or on Sunday morning on Fox, saying, though it's not confirmed, the belief is they're safe, was enough for me to believe that Daboll and Shane were told something. And
I also heard from Schefter the same. So this was all around. This wasn't just from Glazer.
And I just tie this all in to say, I know an exit meeting's coming, and at some point we're going to do more Daboll, Shane, Mara stuff when whoever needs to speak speaks this week. So that's why you want to download, subscribe to One Giant Step. I believe that Brian Daboll and Joe Shane were given a vow of confidence this week, or at the very least this morning or last night or whatever. Steve Tisch was, by the way, in attendance. John Mara wasn't at the game. I believe they were given a vow of confidence. And I think with that vow of confidence, Brian Daboll, in collaboration with Joe Shane, was certainly their eye on getting a quarterback, knew that the best interest of this team was to lose a football game. And if they won, look, the players won the game. But they did not coach or make those calls today. Neighbors would have been out there with the designs on winning. And I think yesterday, watching Bailey Zappi start for the Cleveland Browns, with them picking ahead of the Giants, was another sign that Shane, Mara, everybody, you know what? This is BS. Other organizations do what's right for the team. Yeah. And I think Brian Daboll did that on Sunday.
It's an entirely plausible theory. It just begs the question of why the hell didn't they do that last week? Why didn't John Mara tell Joe Shane and Brian Daboll, hey, listen, we know how big this game is to lose. We want to lose both. We want the first pick. Why the hell did they do it after they won the game and dropped themselves to potentially the fourth pick? Thank goodness the Patriots won that game, and the coach was fired because they won that game, and the Giants ended up getting 3 instead of 4.
I think this is not a complicated answer. This goes to ownership, and John Mara is a very prideful man. Old school, prideful. I don't blame him for that, but it's not like a lot of forward thinking. And he comes from the school of, you play to win the game, the embarrassment stuff. I believe winning a game at home was super important to him. This has been a whole year about celebrating 100 years and everything. And I think that would have been a dirty blemish. And I think that meant way more to John Mara than it probably should have. Then he realized that it would have meant to the fans. Like the fans didn't really care that they won a home game. And I think once that was off the resume, you got to remember, who is John Mara still continually surrounded by? Chris Mara, Tim McDonald, who is obviously doing a good job in the front office, got a right-hand man with Joe Shane. Some might think he's not, but okay. Maybe for everybody that's complained about, the Mara family being, too high up in jobs, maybe some of these others, like I just mentioned, had plenty of conversations with John this week. Hey, we've done a lot of good job, boots on the ground scouting and all of this. The plan is in place. These guys need to go get their quarterback. You can't do that if you keep winning games with guys fighting for their job. Like a simple behind the scenes conversation like that happens from people that John Mara trusts. And that's what changes. Yeah. It would have been better if they lost last week and the Giants were picking first overall. They're not. But ultimately, I think what needed to get done got done. And of all the scenarios, picking third, in many ways, one of two things happens. You're either getting one of the top two quarterbacks that have been coveted, or you control the draft by being in position to take the best player available in the draft. And whether you want to trade out of that, if somebody's willing to do it, or you take the best player, is not a bad place to be, Bryce. And that's why I'm okay here with the third overall pick as we kind of lead that in.
Yeah, and we're going to be discussing this plenty throughout this offseason because It's an interesting decision. It's an interesting prospect of what the Giants do at 3. I think 4 is a worse situation because then you're looking to trade into the top 3. The fact that they have the third pick, they control their destiny in terms of whether or not Travis Hunter falls to them at 3, then another team, then they decide, hey, listen, we wanted a quarterback. We're going to trade down. We're going to gear up for next year when it's arguably a better quarterback class. They control their destiny here. Like the bridge quarterback, we've talked about it a bunch. It just became more likely with the Giants getting the third pick instead of the fourth because now they can actually get some good assets by trading down in the draft because some team is going to really want Travis Hunter. At this point, do we really want him? Is the question that the Giants need to ask themselves.
I am stunned that this is your answer. And look, I'm
hypothetically saying
there's going to be others like you. This is what I would tell you. The Giants lack two things right now that we know they lack: elite talent and a quarterback. By having the third overall pick, you're guaranteeing yourselves one. Now, the quarterback may not stink, and the elite talent could be a bust, but you're guaranteeing yourself a stab at one of those two things. Trading down sounds nice. You get assets, whatever. And if a team wants to, I get all that. But, sometimes when you're a really bad team, take really good players. And I have very much scars on me where the Giants could have had Micah Parsons right now and instead traded down, and picks resulted in Kadarius Toney and Evan Neal and Daniel Bellinger. So,
the Giants did end up with the 7th pick the next year because
they got Evan Neal down there. My point is you could bust with that pick. Here's what I'm saying. Right. I understand that sounds great and people will call that. My early lean is the Giants do not have a number 1 corner on this roster. They don't. They don't have a number 2.
Is Travis Hunter that guy, though?
Yeah,
that's the question.
Yeah, I think so. And by the way,
is he going to play both positions? That's another question you got to ask yourself.
And we're going to do another pod on Travis Hunter if it comes to it. Here's what I'll tell you about Travis Hunter. The money made by an elite corner when you go both ways, teams are going to want him to lean full-time corner, get snaps at receiver, because it's harder to get full-time snaps at receiver and go, let's play sparingly at corner. I believe Travis Hunter will be a corner that teams will creatively allow on the field as a wide receiver. And I think that fits perfectly with what the Giants are trying to do right now, since they already have Malik Neighbors as the number 1 wide receiver. If you got Hunter going a little bit and they need a corner. I'm not telling you that I think that'll ultimately be what happens. My gut tells me that the Giants still are going to find a way here. Maybe it's a trade with the Browns. Maybe the Browns take Hunter. That I think the Giants are going to end up with one of the 2 quarterbacks. I really do.
I'm not as sure about that.
Yeah, look, I'm not as sure either. It's just still kind of my lean. I think the Browns are tricky here because they did.
You got to take a quarterback if you're the Browns.
You say that, Bryce.
You got to though.
But with the Watson deal, here's what could happen with the Browns. They might be more in tune with, let's take the best freaking player and let's be the ones, trading back in end of first round to get a quarterback like that to sit behind, Watson for a year. And oh, by the way,
they're not playing Watson. Watson's done. He will not play another meaningful snap for that organization.
The way they just reworked that contract, I'd be stunned the way they just reworked that contract.
I think they just did that because they had no other choice. Their backs were up against the wall. Maybe. They have no other choice.
Maybe. And there's another thing to remember here as we're pining through. The future of the college football playoff is going to affect us greatly. Because if Drew Allar beats Notre Dame on Thursday night, if Notre Dame's defense could overwhelm him, he goes back to Penn State easy, and he gets to a national championship game. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
He might have a change of heart and look at this weak quarterback class and have people close to him go, Drew, your stock is rising. People are watching you in these standalone games. Next year, he's on the board to be a projected first rounder. But you've seen, like at this time last year, Carson Beck was supposed to be that guy. Your stock could go the other way too. You could get a third quarterback that floods the market here, man. And if that's the case, I think Drew Allar is a classic guy like Jordan Love you want sitting for a year or something. So I'm not saying that the Giants should or shouldn't pick him, but I don't think he'd have an immediate impact. But I'm saying that because that could be a guy that fits Cleveland, and you sit back for a year and do that. There's just something to keep an eye on. There could be a third quarterback that crashes this. Now, this conversation could be moot in 4 days because Notre Dame could kick the crap out of him, and it doesn't look that. Yeah. But just keep an eye on that. If you aren't a college football fan, you want a reason to watch Thursday, watch Drew Allar on Penn State.
Yep.
Because I say this, the Giants adding a third high-end quarterback, and make no mistake, that is a guy that would go high-end if he entered. That is something, and we're taping this during Vikings-Lions, and the Vikings
back?
ripped off a big – oh, boy, yeah, and the Vikings just ripped off a big run. Drew Allar crashing the system here as a third quarterback would be enormous for the Giants because the more the merrier. But with that, Bryce, we're going to get back to watching Sunday Night Football, and this pod is going to go out to all of you, and you already know what happened on Sunday Night Football. Keep downloading and subscribing. This was a little shorty recapping. Once we officially know the Daboll Shane stuff, we're going to get kind of an end of the year addressing either from John Mara or Joe Shane or Brian Daboll or all three. We will recap that in its entirety, and I think that's probably, barring a sudden Monday firing of the coach and GM, that'll probably be the next one giant step you get this week. So download, subscribe everywhere podcasts are available. Appreciate you taking one giant step with us.